Ready? Play.
Welcome back to another episode of Painting Lines. Last week, we broke down Delray Beach and Argentina for you. And this week, we kicked off the Middle East double, which I'm going to nickname the Desert Double because I think that sounds pretty cool, with the Qatar Open debuting as a 500. And we reached the midpoint of the South American swing with Rio wrapping up, and we're going to be breaking down those tournaments for you. But first, Aiden, let me get your thoughts on the difference in talent this week between the tournaments. In Doha, we had all top eight seeds ranked within the top 15 in the world, whereas in Rio, the only player in the top 20 was Zverev. I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely kind of wild to see that. I think part of it is probably just in, I would guess, appearance fees. Like they probably pay for players to show up in Doha just because they have such vast amounts of wealth over there. Uh, and with that, I do think it is definitely a weird setup that they're both valued at 500s because, like you said, the talent level, at least in terms of ranking, is significantly higher in Doha.
yeah, definitely. I did look at the total compensation. So Doha had I think 3 million and then Rio was 2.5 million. So yeah, just a lot more prize money to go around there. But did Rio feel like a 500 to you? I mean, it's kind of crazy that Baez got the same amount of points as Rublev here despite not going through the same route to get there.
Yeah, definitely feels odd. I mean, you look at, like you said, the guys Baez played and the guys Rublev had to play. Rublev played kind of tennis, like household names for tennis players, at least in a few of the rounds. And Baez played what felt almost like nobodies, unless you're really hardcore tracking these clay players. And I think that's also kind of a weird thing with it is that even though they aren't necessarily household names in Rio, it doesn't necessarily mean it's easier because they could be just all clay specialists. Because on the hard court, we're getting the top ranked guys in the world, but on this clay tournament, you're getting guys that don't necessarily get ranked super highly because they're not as good on hard court, but they're really dangerous on clay.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, it goes to show Zverev out in the quarterfinals again, back to back. So like theoretically, he should be cleaning up at these tournaments because he's statistically by far and away the best player there.
Yeah, you definitely think he'd want to be doing better here. I think he's probably been disappointed with how he's done.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, let's just hop into these tournaments. So let's kick it off with Doha here. The first round was an interesting one because we did see a few early upsets. Like, for instance, Dimitrov out in the first round. And honestly, has been kind of a poor start to the year for him. He's had a few first round exits, including a couple of losses already to Lehechka this year. I'm just wondering if this kind of is signaling that he's finally taking that turn. I mean, we've talked about it over the past year. When's he going to see that decline? Could we be seeing him finally shifting out of maybe the top 15 and making way for new top 15 talent?
Unfortunately, I do think so, just because a down point in someone's career is not like it's abnormal, right? Like everyone kind of goes through peaks and troughs, but when you're this late in your career as Dimitrov is, and he's at a trough or kind of at a down point in his career, it's harder to bounce back. And I just don't see him getting back to where he was before. Maybe he'll, go far in tournaments in the future, but I just don't see him getting any more titles.
Yeah, it is kind of a bummer because it feels like his last big resurgence came at like the worst possible time, to be honest, because it was right when Sinner started emerging as like this unbeatable guy, and he lost to him in the Miami final in a Masters 1000 final, big tournament. And his other big one was like one of the last big tournaments that Djokovic was able to win in 2023 at the Paris tournament. Then he started dealing with some injuries like we saw at the US Open, and just a tough situation for a guy that never really got the chance to win the biggest tournaments. Only got, I think, one Masters 1000 win.
Yeah, talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. That's kind of how it felt for like 15 years, though, with the big three there.
Yeah, but at least like during the big three, you kind of knew like he had it from both ends, right? He had the back end of the big three and then the start of Sinner Alcaraz era.
Exactly, exactly.
It's tough, tough break for him.
Speaking of Djokovic, he also lost in the first round, lost to Berrettini. This was a match where I was kind of like, is this a good thing for Berrettini? Where, oh, he's resurging, he's playing really well, or do you think it's a bad thing for Djokovic? Like, okay, we're just not going to see him be able to perform at this level. I mean, he played great at the Australian Open until he had to withdraw, and then he comes in here and loses in the first round.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit of both because I think anytime you get a win over Djokovic, that's great, you know? And this is his first time beating him too, so at least he gets to kind of notch that kill under his belt here. But we're not seeing a peak Djokovic. I don't even know why he played in this tournament. I'm pretty sure he was still injured from the Australian Open. He kind of looked a little like gimpy out there. He was limping. But then again, that just may be because he lost, right? And he's like trying to show that he's injured. Anyway, it has to do with sponsors because I was under the impression he was only playing like slams and big tournaments.
Yeah, I think
So
he's looking for that 100th title and he doesn't know whether he'll be able to get it at a slam or a big tournament. I honestly think he's going to keep looking to try to collect that, and then once he gets to 100, he may only play in like the slams and the Masters 1000s.
yeah, yeah, good point.
And then last first round exit, which is starting to become not really a big deal, was Tsitsipas out to Medvedev. I mean, honestly, not that much to say. It was a close match, but not a crazy loss, to be honest.
Yeah, this was the one last week. Remember, I mentioned Medvedev did a full split and like pretty much, I think, tore his groin or at least pulled it, and he still managed to beat Tsitsipas. So
Pretty nuts, yeah.
not a great look. Yeah, pretty nuts.
Yeah. Pun wasn't intended, but
Yeah,
should have been intended.
should have. It was there, but yeah, I don't know, man. I think Tsitsipas, he said it himself. He's not afraid to admit that the younger generation is getting a lot better, and he's kind of, I don't want to say at the back end of his career, but he's not in his peak. He's not in his prime.
Seems that way. Seems that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Like I don't think he's done playing anytime soon, but he's definitely not gonna be as good as he was, say, 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah, he'd need a complete kind of remodeling or reshaping of his game, it feels like.
Well, mentally, you can't have this attitude and be great. I think he's kind of given up on himself.
I think a good point.
He's content, which there's nothing wrong. He's been one of the top players in the world for, let's say, like coming
Five
up on
years,
half a
6 years.
decade.
Yeah,
So it's a successful career. I just think he's not as hungry anymore, and that's why we're seeing these losses.
makes sense. And then later in the tournament, we saw Alcaraz out in the quarterfinals. And with Sinner out after getting banned, it does feel as though on any given day, you can beat any player in the world now. And I think that probably gives a lot of hope to some guys outside the top 10, outside the top 20, where maybe with Sinner around, they feel as though, okay, if I play this guy, I'm just automatic loss. Now, maybe they feel like it doesn't matter who I play, I have a chance.
Yeah, and you mentioned this before too, like where Sinner was pretty much the only consistent player. Like Alcaraz has the talent and is probably one of the best players
Maybe
on
has the
tour right
highest
now.
peak level in the world.
Highest peak, yeah, but he has so much variability when it comes to it. And I don't know if that's something that he needs to grow into, like if it's a mental thing, like maintaining focus. Because I don't think I don't know what, I mean, Lehech is good,
Yeah, Lehechka
but
is also playing better this year. So don't want to discount Lehechka playing
mhm.
great tennis. Very solid performance from him, but definitely was still an upset.
So I think it's kind of fair to say that Alcaraz tends to play down. Like when when he's playing a player that's equal or better than him, he steps up to the occasion. He plays phenomenal, lights out. But then he has these bad losses to players that aren't as good as him, and I think he lets that get to him. Whereas like if Nadal or Federer played a guy that was less than them, they would kind of wipe the floor. I feel
I
like
think it
Alcaraz
kind of has to
tends
do
to
with
play down.
the ability to go into every match like you're playing at the biggest match in the world, right?
Hmm.
And that's what you saw from the big three every single match. They win in like this is a must win match. Whereas Alcaraz maybe goes in and he's like, okay, it's Lehechka, he's a good opponent, but I mean, we're all speculating here, but
Right.
it's like, oh, maybe he's like, okay, it's just a quarterfinal against Lehechka. If I lose, it's not the biggest deal. I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna play, and we'll see what happens. Whereas maybe with the big three, it's like, okay, I have to win this match.
Yeah.
Everything
Or even
everything's on the
Sinner
line
too.
here.
Like Sinner has that like
Yeah,
foot on the
he
gas at all times. Do not let up no matter what.
yeah, and it's just making sure that your floor level of play is like super high. With
Hmm.
Sinner, it feels as though on a bad day plays like the number 10 guy in the world,
Yeah.
whereas Alcaraz maybe plays like number 35 on a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I feel like when Alcaraz loses, he kind of beats himself, right? Like he's not getting out strategized by players because he has one of the best defensive games on tour right now. I think he's just making unforced errors.
Yeah, it goes for maybe too much.
Right.
And then another weird one was Medvedev. I mean, not weird that he ended up losing, but the way in which he lost was very odd. He was playing FAA, lost the first set, and then just kind of walked off the court. Just disappeared, didn't shake hands, and was definitely just an odd way for that match to end. What were your thoughts on it?
So did he grab his stuff and walk out, or did he
Yeah,
walk in the
yeah, he
training
grabbed
room?
his stuff, but
All right,
like
I didn't
he,
know because I was gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. Like maybe he went in, tried to get some treatment or tried to feel better, and then decided he couldn't, came back out, but he just left.
yeah, I'm
Jeez.
pretty sure he just grabbed his stuff and walked off. And he didn't really, unless I'm mistaken, I feel like he didn't look injured.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
don't know. Maybe I mean I could see this from Medvedev 3 years ago, but I thought we were starting to see him mature and kind of become a more liked player amongst the fans, be a better sport, be
yeah, I
someone
mean,
that's likable on tour. But I think, I'm not surprised that he
it's
did
tough to
this.
say that after what he did at like the ATP finals, right? Like throwing his racket and like playing with the grip as the
Yeah.
holding that out. I don't know if he's
Yeah.
become more mature. Sometimes it feels like he's become less mature.
Yeah. I think he's just getting frustrated out there.
Yeah,
He
I mean,
is, you could just tell.
I just think when he's losing like this and he's in a kind of a slump, even he gets a couple wins, but it's definitely still a slump, and you're like, he's just trying to play through it, kind of.
Yeah, you can tell he's just not really having fun out there. And tennis is a sport where, it's not very kind on you when it's not fun, it's not fun,
one
like
Hundred
when you're
percent.
losing and when nothing seems to go your way. So I don't know what the next couple months for him looks like, if it's stepping aside for a bit, kind of recalibrating yourself, or just because I feel like if you keep playing like this, you just get more down and down on yourself. Like,
Yeah, that's what I mean by him trying to play through it. I mean, he
yeah.
doesn't really have that much of an option, really.
Hmm.
Like realistically, the best time for him to have tried to readjust is right now if he was going to take a break, because as soon as we get into the sunshine double here, that's going to be March, and then we're going to get into the clay season in April and May, and then it's going to be back into the slams, and then it's late in the summer, and we're back on the hard court. It's kind of just go go go.
Yeah.
So he has to just try to play out of it. I feel like, and then hopefully start playing better.
Yeah, I will say he can look to his good friend Rublev as kind of some like shadow of inspiration because Rublev was going through the same thing, early exits, temper tantrums, and then now he just comes out here and wins the title.
100%. I mean,
So
speaking of
it's
Rublev,
possible.
he had a great match in this tournament against Deminar. It's actually my match of the week. But one comment I wanted to say about it right now is just the fact that he was able to convert on his eighth match point speaks like volumes about his mentality, his ability to stay in the match, even though he had moments where he was getting frustrated, he was throwing his racket. The fact that he was able to stay in the match and eventually convert, even though it became very close. He almost choked it. He gave up a match point. He was able to stay in it and eventually was able to convert the win.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think against FAA too, he also had a match point before that match went to a tiebreaker. So He's becoming a mental giant here, at least.
I don't know mental giant, but at least not completely lose control when he has a match point and doesn't convert.
Yeah, 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 definitely. And this was his second title here, right?
I
First one
believe
as a
so. Yeah.
500, and then he won it back in 2020 as the 250. So, fun fact, yeah, this was his first time winning a title twice.
Oh, that's cool to know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But speaking of FAA, he made it to the semis. Good for him, but he kind of got a mini Madrid run here where he got a couple of walkovers, at least one walkover and one early withdrawal. So a good job from him. We're definitely seeing him play pretty decent, I feel like, this year. Still want to see what happens in Madrid, though, and how that impacts his ranking when we get there.
Yeah, I want to see like a head-to-head FAA versus Lehechka to see who is the walkover king. As
Yeah.
far as like who has more walkovers,
Yeah.
who's
You
got the
got to
better
have like a
record.
counter or somewhere.
Because he has to be one of the luckiest players.
Yeah. It seems that way for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Dude, some players go, I think their whole careers without ever like facing a walkover or retirement.
Yeah. I mean, you have to get pretty lucky, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But uh and overall I think yeah, great win for Rublev in this tournament, but
much
hasn't won
needed.
a title since Madrid last year, as we were just talking about, beat FAA in that final. So good for him. Good momentum going into the Masters 1000 season.
Yeah, great for him. I was ready to rule him out, honestly. He was the last person I saw winning this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I saw an article today when I was looking at some news for my What's New of the Week, and one of them was like, okay, three new Grand Slam prospects, and it was like, uh, who would you guess were the ones they talked about?
Fonseca.
Fonseca was one of them.
How new? Are we saying like new to the tour or new as in they haven't won one before,
They
but
haven't
they
won one
could?
before, but like they're kind of rising prospects.
Fritzy?
It wasn't Fritz, it was Draper. And then the last
Oh,
one was Rublev after this win.
no,
And I'm like, that's a bold prediction from this
no.
article to put Rublev in there that early. I mean, he's hasn't made it past a quarterfinal at a slam.
Yeah, I'm taking Zverev before Rublev. Zverev wins the slam before Rublev.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's hard to say who's Rublev going to be able to beat. Is he going to beat Alcaraz? Is he going to beat Zverev? Tough to say.
It is tough, especially for Rublev in the 5 set format, because he tends to lose his focus, as we
Yeah,
mentioned.
it's
And like
also
to
tough
maintain
because
that.
because he probably can't beat someone that level from the baseline
Hmm.
because they're going to come to the net. They're going to take their chances. And a lot of the time, it feels like he chooses not to come to the net and try to end points. He's like, I'm just going to sit at the baseline, continue to just smash the ball,
Exactly. And I feel like his play style, the way he does that, he exerts so much energy. Like he's putting in a lot of effort in each
exhausting
shot.
himself. Yeah.
So
But anyway,
he may just be SOL on a slam.
yeah, I guess. Uh, let's see about Rio though here. So, like you said, Zverev by far the biggest name. I mean, Tabilo was the 3 seed. He went out in the first round. Honestly, very disappointing from him. He did so great last year. He looked like this up and coming prospect and has not won a match yet in 2025. So,
Wow.
not looking great for him. Zverev ended up losing in the quarterfinals to Kamasana. Kind of a disappointing, like I said, South American swing for him. He came in, was the biggest name in like all of these tournaments, and hasn't come close to winning either so far. So we'll see how he does in this last tournament here in the South America or slash Mexico swing. But overall, I mean, there weren't that many names to talk about. So I'm just going to jump right to who won it. Baez ended up taking the title, defends his title from last year. So great job from him to perform at the same level. I mean, he hadn't been playing great. And I think he went out relatively early last tournament, comes in here and performs great on clay. He's definitely a guy that has a very high peak level on clay, but sometimes struggles on other surfaces. Hasn't really had any big performances in my memory on other surfaces, but 500 still not a small win. Like you said, he gets the same amount of points as Rublev does for this. So pretty good job from him just to beat the guys that he needed to get the title here.
Yeah, same amount of points for, let's hear it, for his route to get there. He beat the number 137, 46, 125, 91, and 60. So, no, not to discount him because yes, that is a great win, but definitely not on the same caliber as Rublev. And I think it's pretty ironic that an Argentinian won this tournament in Rio and then a Brazilian won the tournament in Argentina. So they're just kind of flip-flopping.
That is kind of funny. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and I believe by it this is the first time someone's defended the Rio title.
Oh, that's didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, alrighty. You ready to hop into segments here?
Yeah, let's do it. Hey guys, before we jump in, we have some exciting news. We recently partnered with TruePro. They're a great place to buy strings, grips, and tennis apparel. Use discount code Painting Lines, that's one word, for 20% off store wide. You can find the link in our bio.
Alrighty. What's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
I saw Jack Draper withdraws from Dubai to quote manage his workload. So
Oh,
he posted on X, after a great week at Qatar Open tennis, I'm taking on board advice to prioritize my recovery and manage my body after a number of long matches and give myself the best chance of competing consistently throughout the year. I'm gutted to not compete at such an amazing event, but will look forward to returning to competition at BNP Paribas Open and Miami Open. Um, I think it's kind of ironic that another Brit, Dan Evans, actually got the wild card to take his place. So switching one Brit out for another. I also think he's making the right choice here because, especially with Jack Draper's history, um, he hasn't really had the best fitness, and I think with Indian Wells and Miami coming up, those aren't easy conditions to play in. It tends to get pretty hot, especially this time of year in Miami. So I think it's better for him to just come in well rested than try to push his body. Like no one knows his body better than himself. So I think, you can't go wrong here by doing that.
yeah. I mean, it's just kind of funny to see the load management. I mean, you see this in the NBA all the time, but first time I've seen the load management in tennis. Yeah, I mean, it probably is the right decision. I honestly think he just should have given a better excuse. I would have rather
Say
he
he's
kind of hit
injured.
it. It was like, yeah, my knee isn't feeling great. Like even if that isn't the case, saying you're just tired just doesn't feel as great to see from a player. But I guess in the end, it's all the same, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like at the end of the day, he is a professional tennis player. He's a competitor, so he's in the business of playing tennis. So for him to just pull out, it's not like yeah, I don't really feel like playing this week. I think he's truly like needs the rest.
And he wants to set himself up to do better in the tournaments that have a
Hmm.
higher payoff,
For sure.
both in terms
Yeah.
of points and financially.
Yeah. So it's strategic here.
Yeah.
What about you? What did you see this week?
I saw that another retirement news was Fernando Verdasco retires. I honestly didn't even know he was still playing. He's 41 years old,
Whoa.
but it kind of brings up a question to me, which is like, is it better to go out while you're still kind of like relevant to the sport? I mean, we've seen guys like Schwartzman, Team, and a couple years ago we saw Songer retire when they were older, but they still probably could have grinded it out for a little longer. But at a certain point, it's kind of like, what's the point? You're not really going to make that much money, and it's a very difficult lifestyle. What is the payoff of continuing to play? I know it's to compete at this high level, but can definitely get pretty tough at a certain point. But speaking on Verdasco, I mean, he's just another guy. I think he peaked number 7 in the world, but just a guy that, like we were talking about earlier, got kind of stymied by the big three at especially at slams where I looked up the record. He was 2-10 versus the big three at
Whoa.
slams, and against them overall was 7-35. So
Wow.
just kind of got dominated by him, and that prevented him from being maybe a top 5 guy in the world.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like at this point, at 41, he's that tennis journeyman, right? At all the tournaments, maybe the lower level ones, talking to guys saying, like, oh, yeah, I played him over at this tournament. I played him here.
Or
So,
like he's like, I beat this guy at one of these slams because, like I said, 2-10
Yeah.
record. He beat a couple of them at slams.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I feel like he still enjoys the process. He's not winning anything really, but I
Yeah,
think he enjoys being around the game and, kind of sharing his knowledge.
100%. How about bet of the week?
So bet of the week, I got another three-leg parlay
You're
this
loving
week
these
because of what
parlays.
I know there's so much easier when you're in the beginning of a tournament, right? Because you can kind of take three heavy favorites, put them together and get some pretty good odds. So I got Rude, Paul, and Zverev at plus 116. Rude has Rinderknecht. He's 2-0 against him. Paul has Diallo. He has a win against him as well. And he's just, in my opinion, by far the better player. The last one, Zverev, he has Arnaldi. And this one makes me nervous because these two have never played before. And Zverev is switching surfaces going from clay to hard, whereas Arnaldi he played in Delray Beach, so he's gonna stay on the hard court. But but I do think that Zverev is the better player, and he's very consistent. He's one of the most consistent guys on tour, and you don't really tend to see him go out first round. So I do think he'll just get the win here. Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't be calling these necessarily heavy favorites to me. I mean, Rude, we know sometimes struggles on that hard court. Uh, I mean, against Rinderknecht, I think you're right. I think he has the edge, but that's a closer one. And Diallo, I think, is also a dangerous player. I definitely think if I was gonna make the bet, I would go with you. I think
Hmm.
these guys will win, but I think they may all be relatively close matches.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. The rude one. I was just thinking, recency bias, how he did well in Dallas. So,
Yeah, uh,
and that was hard court.
100%.
I'm
You're right.
surprised.
You're
I'm
right.
so surprised Rude is not playing in South America on clay.
Yeah. You'd think you would, but I guess
Ye-
not.
Hey, maybe he wants to change
Yeah,
his
his
stigma or stereotype.
100%. Maybe. I guess we'll see. But yeah, I think that's a bet to watch, and I think you got pretty good odds to be honest.
How about you? Who are you taking this week?
I'm going with Lerner Tien plus 110 over Nori. They
Love
actually
it.
played one time earlier this year in Hong Kong where Nori won, but I think just Lerner's confidence has skyrocketed since then. I mean, back then he was still kind of an unknown. He did play obviously very well at the next gen finals, but still was kind of an unknown in terms of how he performed on the tour. And then he's kind of considered just like a legit player on the rise after his Australian Open performance. So I think he's just going to continue that momentum and get the win here.
Yeah, I love this one. I'm pretty surprised that Tien is the underdog here too.
Yeah,
But
I think I
anyway,
got decent odds too because I think it dropped to like plus 100 right after I
wow,
was
good.
looking at it.
Yeah, you got the lefty matchup.
100%. 100%. And to wrap this up, how about match of the week?
Match of the week. I got Komensanya taking out Jerry in a three-set, three tiebreak thriller. This match was 3 hours and 20 minutes, and it came down to the wire. The final score was 7-6, 6-7, 7-6. And I don't know if listeners who have been listening for a while now know that Jerry used to be one of my favorite players. I love his style, his energy, and I even think I made a pretty bold statement a couple years ago that by this time he would be in the top 15. He's clearly not. But anyway, I feel like this match, it kind of had a brains versus brawn feel to it because Jerry was trying to dominate the match with his powerful strokes. He was going out there, and I felt like he was trying to muscle it past him, like really beat him that way and get to the net to try to assert his dominance. But Kamen Senya, he just outmaneuvered, out strategized Jerry. He had beautifully constructed points, great combos where he would bring Jerry in, pass him, hit behind him, and I think just did a great job of extending points because he realized the longer he stayed in the rallies, the more likely he was to win the points. And then obviously you gotta love a third set tiebreaker that ends on 8-6. Like it was just tense down to the wire.
100%. Sounds like a very exciting match. I didn't catch it, but yeah, Jari is a guy that can play some exciting tennis.
Yeah. How about you? What was your match of the week?
Speaking of third set tiebreaks, Rublev ended up defeating Demonar in a tight 3 sets. Like I said earlier, this was my match of the week. Kind of a bummer as a Demonar fan, but really was just a great match, especially that deciding set. First 2 sets kind of were just back and forth. I mean, Rublev dominated that first set. And then in the second one, Demonar got a break and kind of squeaked it out, held on to win the second set. But that final set, it was really interesting because initially it looked like it was going to be all Rublev. He went up 5-2 and actually had a match point then. This was an interesting one because he probably should have put it away in this match point. He had an easy approach where Demonar's in a bad position. He's stepping into the court. Demonar just guesses correctly, gets it back, and Rublev probably should have put away the volley too, but didn't. And then Demonar passed him, so saved that match point. Had another match point at 5-3 where he had a shot. He maybe could have stepped into the court, and he probably should have because it would have set him up to take an aggressive volley. And maybe he was thinking about that last match point, but he chose not to, ended up not getting the point, and then got broken in that game and kind of threw his racket down after that one. So was a little bit frustrated there. Had another match point at 5-4 and then multiple in the tiebreak. Like I said earlier, Demonar actually had one in the tiebreak as well. So that could have been a pretty impressive comeback there. But in the end, Rublev got it done. And it happened. He didn't end up hitting a winner at the end. He had to wait for Demonar to miss a shot. So maybe he was playing just a little bit more cautious at the end, and that's actually helped him a little bit. But yeah, it was impressive to see the fact that he didn't completely implode after having a match point in like a few games in a row there and not being able to finish it out.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like recently I have become, I don't want to say a Rublev fan, but I do like to see when he does well because he's had a rough couple months, and I just think, I look at this like, hey, good for you, Rublev. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good
I
things are
mean, like
happening.
that's kind of how I would feel if
Yeah.
Medvedev started doing. Like, come on, man. I
Yeah.
mean, I kind of am a Medvedev fan, but it's also like I just want to see him succeed because he's been playing so bad recently.
Exactly. I feel like rooting against him at this point is like kicking a dog when they're
Yeah,
down or something.
exactly. Yeah.
All right, and that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.